Hey there. Good afternoon. Happy Monday. It is Monday, March 24th. I am Rob, that developer dad. And we're still building C Sharp and .NET and Blazor applications. I'll show you what I'm working on in just a moment. Let's go here. It is still the DM's familiar. And I'm just going to log in real quick and then I'll share the screen and talk about what we've been working on the past week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, sometime in a couple of days' time. So we've got our NPC, our commoner NPC creation stuff in here, and we've been working hard on the edit components, getting this to render out the way we like. Now, I'm not in love with this sudden side-by-side stuff. Not sure how that's happening at this point, but we'll figure it out. And I think we're going to fix that up fix this up before we dive into the actual stuff that I want to do today. I want to take a look and see. We're just going to inspect the element here and see why these form group containers so we've got margin bottom, max width 800, margin left, margin right, width padding. All right, how about our form grid? Oh, it's a grid template with 2 columns. I don't think I like that. So we're going to come out to the Blazor client styles. Okay, so that's buried in the component scoped CSS. Easy enough to find. Pop over here, and because we have to deal with component scoped CSS, that means any changes we make won't be visible until we make them, rebuild, and restart the server. So easy peasy. Just pop out here. And let's see, form grid. Width 60%. Let's see here. Grid template columns, 1FR, gap 1 rem, form group. Okay. Before we start implementing group and field order, let's get the edit form CSS itself behaving correctly. Right now, it's using display grid, which is causing some peculiar layout flow on the desktop experience. Let's just convert the main grid container. I want to make sure I've got the Razor form open. Form grid to a flexbox. And I don't know if it's going to look at the CSS for me or not. We'll see. All right. Whoops, I scrolled too far. Let's go ahead and let it update the CSS. You can see that it's overwriting all the grid directions and everything like that with Flexbox. We're going with column. Blah-de, blah-de, blah. Doody, doody, do. Keep. And let's make sure and let's fix up the form grid class directive definition for larger screens as well. I want to constrain the width to maybe about 75% of the available task host space. Have that centered horizontally within the task host. There we go. That's what I want to see. Are you done? Okay, it's done thinking. We'll let Copilot apply its edits. Keeperoo. Save. Rebuild the, I'm going to rebuild the whole solution here. Even though I could probably get away with just rebuilding the UI library itself, but let's see. It is building. It is built. Let's start the server up. Running on localhost as we do. And we'll refresh. Here we go. And let's take a look at Elo and Brightwood. And we are back to where we were before. I'm loving it. So I want to get the basic character information up top. And then I want these game mechanic stats. And then I want to bring in the narrative details. I want to edit things in that order. So to do that, we're going to have to add some code that's going to allow us in our view model abstractions to tell the object editor form as it's rendering what order to put these grouped fields in. I'm just going to tell Copilot that it's much better layout now. Let's start setting the order of the groups as they're painted to the screen. I'm going to need to open up the edit group. And this is where we're going to be adding a property. So we're going to add an order parameter with lower numbers appearing first. So let's add a public int form order. Get set. And then I'm going to add this as a optional parameter. Int form order equals 1000. specifies the name of the group this property that a decorated this property belongs to. Groups properties in a view model into logical collections. When creating the edit form for a particular model type. The name and caption for the group of fields. A relative order for this group to be added to the UI. Lower values appear first. All right, so we've got that. Now we update our edit townsperson view model to use ordered groups. So here's our edit townsperson view model. And we're just going to start at the top. Now you'll notice that the edit townsperson view model only has a very tiny subsection of the properties on the townsperson that it inherits from. And that's because I am only overriding properties that I want to decorate with these UI specific attributes. So basic character information, form. I'm going to stop the application because it's just going to freak out. Form order is 1. And form order is 1. For basic character, narrative details, I'm not going to assign a form order to those because I'm just going to say form order, let's say 5 or 10. I like 10. There we go. Okay, I've assigned form order values to basic character information and 5e game mechanics. I've left the third group without an A. Form order. So it should receive the default for that. Let's update edit model to respect our group ordering strategy. Bam. edit model here. So we need to capture the form order when we're creating the groups, and then we're going to sort the groups before we render. So I should in here somewhere. There's a nested class in here, public class field group. Represent artificial groups of fields as assigned in the edit group attribute that decorates properties on the view model classes. All right. I'm just going to grab that property out of here. There's that. Okay. Actually, I'm going to undo all of these changes, including my comments, because that's going to totally mess with Copilot's ability to apply its changes. Let's go. I'm just going to let Copilot make the edit for me rather than doing it manually. All right, let's keep all these changes. Save. Group attribute, group name, group order. Group attribute, form order. Sort groups by order, then name if at root level. Okay. And then in the object editor form, remove any sorting since the groups will already be ordered. And that code looks reasonable there, so I'm just going to let it apply. Keep. Save. Just hit save all. Rebuild. And then, so by doing what we just did, that list of ability scores on the edit form should move from the very end of that form to sit between the basic character information, like the name and their appearance, and the narrative details, like background, profession, personality type stuff. So let's run. Oh, it doesn't like something. Do I have problems? I don't have problems. Let's rebuild it again. Well, there's something wrong somewhere. All right. Cannot implicitly convert type string to int. Did I goof something up? Razor 38, 30, 33, 38. What are you complaining about? Feature, blah, blah, blah. Cannot implicitly convert type string to int. Where is it trying to do? Ah, there we go. Maybe. Clean. I might actually have to close this, the Razor file. Rather than do that, is just pop over to Edit Model. Because sometimes when you build, I have noticed, especially when you're building ASP.NET, the .NET compiler, Roslyn, will get really confused and grouchy about Razor files. Okay. So what is it complaining about? Here's output. Terminal. ls cd UI cd game tools dot Blazor client cd game tools dot Blazor client again. Okay, .NET, and I'm gonna say clear .NET build. All right. Object editor form dot Razor. Here we are. Line string to int. So line 9 looks like something somewhere got goofy. Let's see if it'll build now. Because it should have had this double question mark here for the null coalescing operator. And it looks like we figured it out. So I'm going to do one more rebuild. Yeah. Copilot, when it was applying its changes, it just goofed up this line of code here that threw everything below it out of whack. It happens. And that's why it's important to understand how to do long division on paper before you start using the calculator. So that when things go sideways, you know what to look for. Looks like that's happy. So let's execute the server process. We're up and running. We'll load up manage NPCs and reload the page. And while it loads and all of that stuff, I'll pull it on over here. Let's take a look at Mr. Elowen Brightwood again. And we see that our basic character information, then we've got the game mechanics, and then we've got our narrative details. Now, I don't love the fact, there's a couple of things I don't like in here. Number one is we're chewing up an awful lot of vertical space between these groups. We can tighten that up with CSS later. It's fine. Now, the labeling on these groups is a-okay. However, a big problem I have with the way we're doing this in the code, if we look over at our townsperson view model, we've got a ton of magic strings in here. So what I want to do is, before we go any further with any of this, I'm going to take this and let's see here. Here's a refactor. I want to introduce a constant for all occurrences of basic character information. And I'm going to rename the V symbol to form group basic NPC info. There. That's better. Now these UI labels, they're not going to be repeated over and over again, and these strings, don't really need to sweat it. This, we definitely want to rename this. So we're going to refactor, introduce constant for all occurrences of that. V, I'm going to pop back up here and rename this symbol to form grp underscore npc story details. There we go. And then we'll spin down to the bottom, and I'm going to do this one as well. Refactor, introduce constant for all occurrences. I'm going to spin up here again. Rename this symbol to form group grp underscore, let's spell it the same, npc 5e mechanic. There. Now, I have a feeling, oh, maybe not. I don't think these edit group attributes are actually propagated into my character appearance view models. Let's make sure, just to be certain, not up in the managers, but down in the services namespace for our UI project. Object services, attributes, edit models. Let's take a peek here. We'll just look at edit character appearance. Yeah, we're fine. We're okay. Okay. So we're going to save. Now this won't have, or this shouldn't have had any effect on the actual way the code behaves. It's just a cleaner way of representing those group names so that I'm less likely to mistype one and end up with an extraneous group that with a single field in it because I fat fingered the name of the group. Because we are driving that grouping by those string values. And whenever we do something like that, where we're actually driving logic or the way things get categorized together in the code, whatever we're doing that based off of just some arbitrary value that we would type in, it's always a better idea to define the actual value as either a member or a module level constant and just refer to it by the constant or variable name than it is to just keep typing that magic value over and over again. because if we ever need to change it, we update it in one place. If and again, if we're using it to drive things like looping, decision points, so on and so forth, we want to make sure that we're using the same value when we're running our comparisons. And it looks like we are in good shape. So awesome. Okay. So our groups, we can now put these in order. And if we come over to Edit Model, down in the Build fields, wherever you are, here it is. We can see at the very end of all this, we say groups equals groups.order by g.order, then by name. And then we out to a list. Mwah! Beautiful. All right, next step, field order. Going to be relatively easy because we'll follow a similar pattern, but it's gonna get real goofy on an edge case that we already have lying in wait for us. Let's handle the normal field ordering first. And we are going to want the user editable field. Let's update the user editable field, or the user editable attribute class, to give us a place to drop this order value for each field. Now, with this system that we've put in place, because I'm on the edit group attribute, the default value for group order or form order being 1,000, any group or any group where I don't specify a form order for it, it gets that 1,000, goes to the end. And if I've got a bunch of groups that I haven't specified an actual order number for, we push them to the bottom and then sort them alphabetically by the group name. All right, field ordering with a default value of 1,000, because if we ever have a form with 1,000 fields on it, we have made an egregiously bad design decision. No user form should ever have 1,000 frickin' fields on it. And if your manager tells you to build a form with 1,000 fields on it, I want you to tell them I said bad. Terrible UX. Let's keep this. There we go. Default max length is 500. Default order is there. Form order, default order, thing of beauty. If we added, I'm going to change the name of this. Group order. Rename this variable to group order. All right. Cool. I changed form order to group order to differentiate between the two sorting contexts. For groups, we're ordering within the form. For fields, we're ordering within the group. All right, we'll go back over to Edit Model. And let's let it apply its changes. So in the fields list inside our field group thingy, like that private or the nested subclass, we're adding a sort fields thingy. So let's keep this. Now it doesn't like group order. Oh, edit field. Duh. I'm a doofus. User editable. Build fields, all that good stuff. I expect it's probably complaining that group order isn't a thing down here either. Yep. All right. Now we can use both ordering systems. All that good stuff. We need to add that order property to the edit field class now. Roslyn is complaining. So I'll just pop down here and open up the edit field class definition here. I'll go ahead and save this. We'll let it apply. It's doing its thing. Keep. Save. I see no numbers on the problems tab. That's a beautiful thing about keeping that problems, like even the compiler warnings out, or compiler warnings to 0, and just addressing them as we go, because it gives me immediate feedback. If I do something dumb in my code, I know immediately that there's something that requires my attention. And if I just mentally treat warnings as if they're errors, it helps me keep that clean and actually give a whole lot of value to this problems tab down here in Visual Studio Code. And it keeps the compiler happy, and it takes up less time on the build, which means I'm running the GitHub build server less intensely when I do build and deploy. And it's only pennies, but pennies become dollars, become my mortgage payment. And just keeping things tidy as we go. It's like if you've ever worked in a professional kitchen or uh, worked in, say, like a workshop where you're building things from wood, cleaning as you go is totally a thing. And it's not a habit that most of us coders develop. We kind of just let the compiler warnings. We'll fix the errors, of course, because we can't build, but we'll let those warnings build up over time, and then we've got a mountain of them, and then it's just too much bloody work to deal with them. So we start adding pragma warnings like, "Oh, just ignore all of these warnings. I don't care about them," and then it comes back to bite us in the butt. It's just way easier, in my opinion, to keep errors and warnings out of my code base. It saves a lot of heartache and pain and head scratching and grumpy witcher noises. So save. I'm going to save all again, and I'll build. And I mean, I talk about these good habits that it's a good idea to have. I'm no saint. I'll be the first to admit I am sloppy in the kitchen. My workshop is a disaster area right now, but they're good ideas. It's good things to turn into a habit, and I've successfully done it here in Codeland. I just need to apply that lesson to the rest of my life. Wish me luck. All right, we're built. Everything's happy. Manage the NPCs. Refresh, and while it's refreshing from the server, we'll pop over here. I'll hit edit. I just want to make sure it loads. We haven't applied values to any of these things yet. And I don't see any evidence that these fields are of course, because the underlying field names are all value here. Background description, personality description, profession description. These are in alphabetical order, yo. Detailed appearance, full name. All right. We are definitely ordering these fields within their groups. And we kind of put them in a screwy order along the way, didn't we? So I'm going to close edit field. I'm going to close edit model and user editable attribute. And I've already forgotten what the variable name is because I'm a silly goose. And we're going to change the attribute stuff. So that means I will need to rebuild everything before we can run it and see it manifest in the UI. So let's add a comma. And I believe it's group order. And this is full name. Let's say 1. Okay. Now, after full name, anything else I add to basic character information, I think alphabetical order is perfectly fine. But we definitely want the full name at the top of that group. So I'm going to save that. Excuse me. Now for appearance, I think appearance is in the basic, so that's cool. For the story details, I think I want to go with background, profession, and then personality. So in order to get that order in place, what I'm going to have to do is come into these other view models. And we unfortunately can't use direct property or direct type navigation for these because we're actually using subtypes. We're using view models for these things. So I think I said background, then profession, then personality. So we're going to come into the background view model and apply the group order property here. Group order will be 1. Save. Profession or vocation. Group order will be 2. And then out on the main townsperson view model, which is where we've got the personality details, group order 3. Save. Save it all. Rebuild the solution. Now, if memory serves, well, alphabetical order, we went background, personality, background, character background, vocation, and personality, I think was the order that we had it. We're going to find out. Now it's definitely in background, profession, personality. Okay. Refresh. Let's take a look. All right, so full name, it's at the top. Detailed appearance comes next. Here's our game mechanics. We're not worried about those yet. We've got background, profession, personality. Because background and profession feed personality. Groovy. I like it. I like this a lot. All right. Game mechanics. This is going to get goofy because if we look at our view model, we see that it's NPC stats 5e. Overriding that, and we're using the view model. And we're using editability score stat view model. I need to change all of these others to editability score stat view models. And then if we look, we see that we've got that editability score stat view model. And here's our user editable, but it doesn't make sense to try and apply an ordering key to this because it's actually just different instances of the same property. So what I need to do is, well, let's talk with Copilot a little bit about this edge case. Okay, our standard field sorting cases are working nicely. Now for that edge case. The fields in the 5e game mechanics group. The edit NPC 5e NPC stats 5e view model has ability score stat properties for each of the 6 ability scores. The user editable attribute is applied to the value property. Hey, C-Films, on that edit ability score stat view model. In order to assign a group order to the ability scores, we need to figure out how to split the edit field metadata between 2 different attribute instances. Sounds like a daunting prospect to me. I'm doing good, man. Doing real good. Making some solid progress on our edit form. Had a pretty good morning subcontracting with this other independent developer consultant that I'm starting to work with, and I have a feeling that that's going to become a very fruitful professional relationship for both of us. What do I think of vibe coding? You know what? I've heard the term, and I haven't even seriously looked at I haven't even seriously looked into what that means. Maybe I'm being an old man, like maybe I'm being a little boomerish, but the idea of vibe coding, it gives me the creeps, dude. I feel like it's just some kind of young kid hipster nonsense. Tricky because the metadata is split across different levels. Group assignment on the parent property. Actually, the group assignment, yeah, okay. Edit field details on the child property. Add an order property to the game object attribute. No. The LLM generates software, shifting the programmer's role from manual coding to guiding, testing, AI-dependent programming technique where a person describes a problem in a few sentences as a prompt, refining the AI-generated source code. Okay, so basically vibe coding is the term for exactly what I'm doing right now. I don't like it. I don't like the term. I don't like the term at all. Because it papers over the need for the human driver to understand the way software happens. I don't care how good an LLM gets. It's not an LLM is never going, or LLMs as we know them today are never going to be able to perform the type of lateral thinking that human beings do. Um, they're not really able to hold parallel structures in their head, in their mind at the same time, and define how those parallel structures should interact, and so on and so forth. Like, for what I'm doing right now, it's fine. But for deep architectural thinking, of any use case implementations that are more complex than what I'm doing, that involve like asynchronous parallel processes for side effects and so on and so forth. Like, basically, you get into event-based systems and reactive application scenarios and so on, like deep architecture. I am highly skeptical that LLMs are going to be able to generate software that doesn't require heavy editing by a human who knows what's going on. That's my bottom line. I prefer to think of what I'm doing as AI assisted, or pair programming with an AI. The term vibe coding, if that's the semantic behind it, I think it's a terrible term. That's terrible terminology, because it trivializes the level at which the human operator has to be involved and engaged and informed in not only the process of the software, but engaged with and have expertise in how the software actually happens and how the software actually works. LLMs are the calculator that we start doing the long division on after we've mastered doing long division on paper. They're a shortcut. That's it. They're a machine that make it easier for us to do our jobs faster. But like all machines, if you use them wrong or you don't know what you're doing, you either waste a whole lot of time and materials, and in a worst case scenario, you hurt yourself. In the like when you think of things like table saws or chainsaws and stuff like that, um, in the hands of a inexperienced developer, I feel like an LLM could wreak absolute havoc on an enterprise. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to use AI to help me get my software built faster, but I know exactly what this code is doing before it goes to production. And my fear with vibe coding is we're going to have an awful lot of software produced that hasn't actually had that close inspection of that close inspection of what needs to be done. Yeah, I got a bad feeling about it, man. Ah, okay, enough ranting. I want to get this sorted out. So I'm trying to figure out how I can get ordering into fields that perhaps don't necessarily have excuse me, that won't necessarily have that explicit thing, like for these ability scores, because this is a very abstract field. I don't have a separate class for strength, constitution, dexterity, all of those. And you can see the score mod, all I'm doing is passing out data. And I don't want to tie display order to the actual ability score type, because the display order really only matters in the UI. And the LLM suggested that I use game object as the attribute for that. And no, that's not what game object's purpose is. Yeah. Game object is a marker attribute for code level flow control. Let's not pollute it with UI with purpose that should be exclusive to presentation. Now, this is the field spec. Presentation metadata to the edit NPC by creating a new attribute, field order attribute. I think rather than increasing the clutter in our view model classes, we could consolidate the grouping I'm not going to solve this problem during this stream, but I think Copilot and I are on a path that could lead us to success. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to call this stream a success. I have, I'm going to say 90% of the use cases that I have for grouping and sorting fields that would be painted out to an edit form just like this. I can group my fields. I can determine the order in which those groups are added to the form. And I can determine the order in which most fields appear within their assigned groups. So this is a really weird odd duck here. The game mechanics, because of the way the data structure has shaken out. And I'm not about to change that data structure because it is the most flexible, most resilient to change either from one game mechanic or set of game mechanics to another game's mechanics to what have you. The concept that I have in there is really flexible, and I'm not going to sacrifice that. We're going to take this on either between today and tomorrow afternoon's stream, or I'll at least have a game plan by 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow when I start my next stream. So what we're going to do is I'm going to sort out at least a game plan. If it seems quick to implement, I'm just going to implement it and we'll talk through it. But when I started the stream, I said my goal is to add sorting to the groups and sorting to the fields for the fields within them. And we have reached that goal. We've achieved it. So I'm going to call this a successful stream. Before I bounce, I'm going to respond to CFilms here, committing your CSS design code to GitHub, doing it in small commits. This is the way, bro. That's the way to do it. I let my commits get a little bit fat. It's a bad habit that I want to improve on. I tend to forget that I need to commit things, but I know that this commit is actually going to be relatively small. It's changes for a particular purpose. So thanks for the reminder. And I'm just going to go ahead and commit the changes that I've made this hour, push those on up to my server. I'll be deploying out to Azure later this week, I expect. But yeah, good session, I think. Thank you, Copilot. Thanks for hanging out. CFilms, what you describe is absolutely the smart way to do things. Small commits, one little piece at a time, code a little, test a little, because, programming is totally FAFO. Fool around and find out. And it's always easier to find out about small mistakes that you made a minute ago than it is to find out about a big mistake you made a week ago and have to unwind everything you've done and remember what you did. So yeah, tiny increments and just keep iterating a couple of minutes at a time. And start small, plan your baby steps, and just start rolling. Until tomorrow, thanks for joining me. Take care and happy coding. Bye now.